The door creaked open as Lisa stepped into the house, her heels clicking rhythmically against the hardwood floor. In her hands, she held a vibrant bouquet of fresh lilies, their delicate petals glowing under the soft afternoon light. Her expression was confident, her smile bright, as though she were returning from an ordinary day. But as her eyes scanned the room, that confidence faltered. She paused, her gaze locking onto the wall, where their wedding photo had hung for years. Now, the space was glaringly empty, a silent accusation that made her heart skip a beat. Her steps slowed, the smile on her lips fading into an uneasy grimace. "James," she called out, her voice uncertain. The faint scent of the flowers she carried filled the room, a fragrance once tied to happy memories, but now reeking of irony. She couldn't tear her eyes away from that empty wall, the stark absence of their photo hitting her like a tidal wave. From the couch, James looked up, his expression calm, but his eyes sharp and unreadable. "Something wrong?" he asked, his voice steady, almost too casual. Lisa froze, her fingers tightening around the stems of the bouquet. She tried to form words, but her throat felt dry. The room seemed heavier, the walls closing in around her as the empty space on the wall loomed larger in her mind. Lisa's grip on the bouquet tightened as the silence between them stretched, her heartbeat loud in her ears. The absence of the wedding photo wasn't just a decorative change, it was a shift in their world, a sign that something deeply personal and cherished had been disturbed. James sat motionless on the couch, his calm demeanor masking the storm of emotions within. For years, their marriage had been his foundation, a place where love, trust, and memories had built an unshakable bond, or so he thought. But over time, cracks had appeared, subtle yet undeniable, threatening to collapse everything they had created together. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about everything at stake. The life they had built, the years they had shared, the trust that had once seemed unbreakable. For James, this confrontation was more than just uncovering the truth. It was about reclaiming his dignity, his self-respect, and his future. Lisa glanced nervously at the empty space on the wall again, the void almost taunting her. "Where's the picture?" she finally managed to ask, her voice trembling. James's gaze didn't waver as he replied, "I didn't think it belonged there anymore." His words, calm and deliberate, cut through her defenses like a blade. Lisa's face paled, and the weight of his response pressed down on her. This wasn't a simple question about home decor. It was an unspoken declaration that the trust they once shared was no longer intact. The stakes were clear. For Lisa, it was the fear of losing everything she had taken for granted. For James, it was the determination to confront the lies that had quietly eroded their marriage. Lisa shifted uncomfortably, her polished demeanor cracking as she clutched the bouquet tighter. Her gaze darted from James to the empty wall, searching for a plausible explanation for the stark absence of their wedding photo. "I don't understand," she said, her voice faltering. "Why would you take it down?" James leaned back on the couch, his expression calm but his eyes sharp, dissecting her every move. "I thought it didn't represent us anymore," he replied evenly. "Or, at least, not the us I thought we were." His words hung in the air, heavy and unrelenting. Lisa's breath hitched, and she forced a smile, the kind she used to deflect suspicion. "James, you're being dramatic. It's just a picture. We can put it back." "It's not just a picture, Lisa," James interrupted, his voice firm but measured. "It's a reminder. A reminder of promises made and broken." Lisa froze, her forced smile fading as a flicker of unease crossed her face. "What are you talking about?" she asked, though her tone betrayed her. She wasn't as clueless as she pretended to be. James stood, his movements deliberate, and walked to the coffee table where a small envelope Saturday. "I've been noticing things for a while now," he said, picking up the envelope and holding it in his hand. "The late nights, the unexplained absences, the excuses that didn't quite add up." Her eyes widened, her grip on the bouquet tightening. "James, Save it." He cut her off, his tone cold but steady. "I wanted to believe you, Lisa. I wanted to trust you. But trust isn't blind, it's earned. And you've been doing a damn good job of breaking it. Lisa's face turned pale, her carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. James set the envelope back on the table, his gaze never leaving hers. You walked in here today, smiling, holding those flowers like everything's fine. But it's not.
And you know it.
So, Lisa, tell me, how long were you planning to keep this charade up? Lisa's composure shattered as James's words echoed through the room. Her fingers trembled around the bouquet, the once bright flowers now feeling like a weight in her hands. She opened her mouth, desperate to find an excuse, but James was already moving toward the coffee table. You know, he began, picking up a folder that had been resting there. I thought I was imagining things at first. Late nights at work, meetings that ran longer than they should, the scent of perfume that wasn't yours but somehow clung to your clothes. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. He opened the folder, revealing a stack of photos and printed documents. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as he flipped through them, each page a silent accusation. But then I started paying attention, he continued.
To the little things.
The way your phone was always face down. The way you'd smile when a message came through but wouldn't share what it said. The way you avoided looking me in the eye. Lisa's knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stay upright. James, she started, her voice trembling. It's not what you think. Let me explain. Explain what? James snapped, his voice rising for the first time. Explain this? He pulled out a photograph, placing it on the table between them. It showed Lisa sitting in a dimly lit restaurant, leaning in close to another man. Her smile was unmistakable, and so was the intimacy in her body language. Lisa's face drained of color, and her hands instinctively went to her mouth. James, please, she whispered. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like. James interrupted, his voice colder now. You're going to stand there and tell me that you weren't having dinner with him? That you weren't smiling at him the way you used to smile at me? That you weren't lying to my face every single day? Lisa stammered, her words incoherent as tears began to well in her eyes. James wasn't finished. He reached into the folder again, pulling out a printed phone record. And this? Multiple calls at all hours of the day. Text messages that you deleted before coming home. Do you think I would notice? James, Stop lying, Lisa. His voice cracked with the weight of his anger and heartbreak. I trusted you. I believed in you. And this is how you repay me. Lisa's tears spilled over as she sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. I'm sorry, she sobbed. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. Please, we can fix this. James let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. A mistake, he repeated. Mistakes are accidental, Lisa. This was deliberate. Every call, every dinner, every lie, you chose this. Over and over again. The room fell silent, the weight of the truth hanging heavy between them. Lisa's sobs filled the space, but James stood unmoving, his gaze piercing. You may think you can fix this, he said quietly, but I've already made my decision. Lisa's sobs grew louder as she sat crumpled on the couch, clutching the bouquet like it could somehow shield her from the consequences of her actions. But James was unmoved. He had spent too long doubting himself, too long letting her lies chip away at his trust, and now he was ready to take control. He reached for another folder on the coffee table, this one thicker than the first. Lisa, he said, his voice calm but cutting, you thought you were clever, didn't you? That you could lie to my face, sneak around, and I'd never put the pieces together. She looked up at him, her tear-streaked face filled with desperation. James, I was wrong. I know I hurt you, but please, don't do this. James ignored her plea, opening the folder and pulling out a neatly printed document. Do you know what this is? He asked, holding it up for her to see. Lisa's eyes widened as she recognized the header. Divorce proceedings. She froze, the reality of the situation sinking in like a lead weight. I filed these this morning, James continued, his tone steady. And before you ask, yes, the prenup is still valid. I made sure of that. You'll be left with what you brought into this marriage, nothing more. Lisa's hand shook as she reached for the document, but James placed it back in the folder before she could touch it. You'll also find the accounts have been frozen. Any joint assets?
Gone.
I've already contacted the bank. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. He pressed on, relentless. And before you think about turning to him for help, he added, his voice cold, you might want to check in with his wife. She's already been informed. I made sure of it. Lisa's face crumpled, her tears falling faster now. James, please don't do this, she begged. I'll change. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance. James shook his head slowly, the pain in his expression evident, but his resolve unshaken. I gave you chances, Lisa. Every time I chose to ignore the signs, every time I told myself you'd never betray me. But you made your choices, and now you'll have to live with them. He stepped back, his voice soft but firm. I'm done being the fool in this relationship. This is my life, and I won't let you drag me down with your lies any longer. Lisa collapsed into the couch, her sobs echoing through the room as James walked to the door. I've already started packing, he said over his shoulder. The movers will handle the rest tomorrow. By then, I expect you to be gone. He paused at the doorway, glancing back one last time. Enjoy the flowers, Lisa. It's the least you can do after all this. With that, he stepped outside, leaving her alone in the silence, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal. The door clicked shut behind James, leaving Lisa alone in the suffocating silence of the living room. Her trembling hands reached for the bouquet on the table, the once beautiful flowers now feeling like a cruel reminder of everything she had destroyed. The room, once filled with warmth and memories, now felt cold and unrecognizable. But James wasn't gone for good, not yet. Moments later, the door reopened, and he stepped back inside, holding something in his hands. Lisa looked up, her tear-streaked face etched with confusion and dread. I almost forgot, James said calmly, holding up a single, framed photo. It was their wedding photo, the one that used to hang on the wall. You asked about this earlier. Lisa's eyes widened, her gaze flickering between the photo and James. James, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Please don't do this. James walked to the coffee table, his movements deliberate, and placed the frame face down beside the folder of evidence. This used to mean everything to me, he said, his voice steady, but heavy with emotion. But now, it's just a reminder of what we've lost. What you've thrown away. Lisa reached out, her voice breaking. James, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. You can't fix this, Lisa, James interrupted, his tone cold and resolute. This isn't something you can undo with apologies or promises. Trust isn't something you rebuild overnight. And honestly, he paused, meeting her gaze. I don't want to rebuild it with you. The weight of his words hit Lisa like a blow, and for the first time, she seemed to understand the finality of what was happening. She sank into the couch, her hands clutching the bouquet as if it were her last lifeline. James straightened, his expression calm but firm. I deserve better. And so do you, if you're willing to admit it to yourself. With that, he turned and walked to the door one last time. This time, when the door closed behind him, it stayed shut. Lisa sat frozen, the reality of her choices crashing down around her. Her gaze drifted to the face-down photo on the table, the visible cracks in the frame mirroring the cracks in her life. The flowers she had brought to mask her guilt now felt like an empty gesture, their beauty unable to hide the truth. Outside, James walked to his car, the cool evening air brushing against his face. For the first time in years, he felt a strange sense of peace. The weight he had carried, the doubt, the pain, the betrayal, was gone. As he started the engine, he glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the house grow smaller in the distance. There was no anger in his heart, only resolve. This wasn't the ending he had envisioned, but it was the one he needed. And as the road stretched out before him, endless and open, he felt a glimmer of hope for the future, a life free of lies, where he could finally find himself again. As James drove away from the house, the rhythmic hum of the engine filled the quiet void left in his chest. The memories he was leaving behind felt heavy, but the weight on his shoulders seemed to lift with every mile he put between himself and that door. For years, James had built his life around Lisa, trusting her, loving her, and believing in the strength of their bond. But betrayal had a way of unraveling even the strongest foundations. The evidence he had collected wasn't just proof of her lies, it was a reflection of how much he had ignored for the sake of their marriage. He glanced at the empty passenger seat beside him. It felt symbolic, not of loneliness, but of space, room for something better, something real, to come into his life. For the first time in years, he felt free, untethered from the web of lies that had held him back. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lisa sat in the same spot on the couch, staring blankly at the bouquet of flowers on the table. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock. The evidence James had laid out was still scattered across the coffee table, each piece a brutal reminder of what she had done. Her hands trembled as she picked up the wedding photo he had left face down. Flipping it over, she stared at their smiling faces from a time that now felt like a lifetime ago. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she realized just how much she had lost, not just James, but the life they had built together. She whispered his name, her voice cracking, but there was no answer. The door was closed, the room empty, and the reality of her choices was inescapable. She clutched the photo tightly to her chest, sobbing, as the weight of her actions pressed down on her. For James, the open road stretched out endlessly before him, a blank canvas ready to be painted with new memories. He rolled down the window, letting the cool breeze brush against his face, carrying away the remnants of the past. As he drove, he spotted a field of wildflowers along the roadside, their vibrant colors swaying in the wind. They reminded him that beauty and resilience could be found even in the most unexpected places. It wasn't about perfection, it was about growth, about moving forward. James smiled faintly, his fingers drumming lightly on the steering wheel. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he was excited to find out. The pain would fade, and with it, he would rebuild, not with lies, but with honesty and strength. There was no going back. And for James, that was the best decision he had ever made.